really love working.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is like I love to work. I love to help.
Mm.
Um, I think that's my default, but I've had to learn, like, I think certainly in my 20s when I was kind of going through all my training, I just got warned, like, if people in health, as a health professional, if you do not take care of yourself, you're going to burn out. Like, that was such a message that I was taught in my training, my professional training, that I think I became razor focused on, like, I need to really be clear about setting boundaries and saying no, because if I don't do that, like, I remember being in grad school and in our class, our professor was basically saying to our class, in 10 years, most of you won't be practicing. Most of you will have burned out and will exit the profession.
Mm.
And burnout for health professionals is a really big thing. And so I think I became really aware and careful. Like, I need to be very, very, very careful on my boundaries.
Mm.
Um, in order for me to do this work, I'm coming up on 30 years now. So I've had to be really intentional, but it's not something that I don't think ever really has come naturally. I think I just have to become very mindful for it. That's kinda how
Yeah.
I would see
I mean, that topic of burnout, we could get off on a whole side tangent here, which I don't want to, but this module is really applicable to that topic
it.
of being able, and obviously there's other factors that will come into play for many people, and not everyone, let's say at work, has the agency to be able to say no. Sometimes you
Yes,
don't really have a choice.
yes,
But that's kind of where we're going with our topic today, is when do you really focus on it, and focusing on the areas that you do have choice in. And
yes.
that's what we really want to empower people with today.
Mhm. We're hearing some good comments here in terms of beer. I love to take care of, the business and at home that I drove myself to burnout. Yes,
Mm.
I know. It is something that we have to be so careful, but how do you determine when you have a choice and where you just feel like you don't have a choice? Good question, Christine. I think that is, um okay, so let me back up on this one. This is actually really important.
That's a great question.
A really good question. So we all have choice. Okay, so this is really important. Even in the module, I talked about this, right? Like, try to take the word "I can't" out of our vocabulary. Let's just try to take that out of our vocabulary. And even like, and this is something that's really good for us to teach our kids, teach our teams. So, and try to change it to "I choose to" or "I choose not to." Okay, so I choose to or I choose not to. So it's really common for a lot of us, for us to think, well, I have to work. I have to work. I have to. The reality is none of us have to work. The reality is if we don't work, then we're not going to be able to earn
There's
income.
consequences. There's
There's
natural
consequences.
consequences that will happen to all of our choices.
Right, and so I think we have to kind of like, people say, "Well, I have to work." It's like, "Well, actually, no, you don't have to work." But if you don't work, then you can't put food on your table, then you can't pay your rent, then you might be actually homeless, and, like, there's a ripple effect of those choices, and some people make those choices. But I think what we have to do is when we think about choices, and taking that word "I can't" out of our vocabulary, then choosing to "I choose to" or "I choose not to." And sometimes those choices that we have are a lot more attractive than other choices. But try to train ourselves to take out the word "I can't." I can't, and then changing it to "I choose to" or "I choose not to." There's a lot of things that are not great options. They're not great choices, but they're still choices. And it's
And
actually a really great exercise, like okay, by example, okay, last night, in our home, one of our kids was like working busy trying to get some math assignment done, and he's like, I have to get this done. I have to get it. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't have to do anything. I said, I would love you to get that done, but I also really want you to go to bed at a certain time because I know the ripple effect if you don't get enough sleep. This is what's going to happen. And I told him, I said, change the language from "you have to" versus "I choose to" or "I choose not to." It's a really simple mindset shift that we can actually do that all of a sudden gives people choice. And when people have choice, all of a sudden they feel a little bit more empowered versus life is happening actually to them. So it's a
mhm.
bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that makes sense.
And the other piece to that is sometimes you might have to go against everything that you want and do something. Like you're making the choice to go along with it because you determine, for whatever reason, I have to do this. Even though I don't want to do this, I have to do this. Well, that can be one of the strongest motivators for change. You
Mhm.
you take that feeling of frustration in that moment that, oh, I have to do this, and use that to say, okay, I don't want this to keep on happening. What can I do differently in the future? How can I start to change this path? And so that's where it can begin for a lot of people, is recognizing that I'm doing stuff that I don't really want to be doing. And I mean, we're not talking about necessarily the same stuff that we're into the video here, but when you
Mhm.
have those hard choices, I guess that's what I want to emphasize is you can't always make the choice you want to make, but it can be the momentum to do something different going forward.
Mhm.